The notification popped up on my phone while I was sitting in my cramped apartment, eating leftover Chinese takeout. It was a photo from my sister Madison, the whole family grinning in front of a private jet, champagne glasses raised. Off to Bora Bora, 7 days in paradise, the caption read. My stomach dropped. They'd done it again. The annual family vacation I'd somehow been left out of for the 3rd year running. But this time, instead of crying into my lo mein, I made a decision. That would change everything. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Living in Denver had its perks, but being an accountant at a mid-sized firm wasn't exactly the glamorous life my family seemed to value. While my siblings, Madison, the successful real estate agent, and Connor, the tech entrepreneur, lived in sprawling homes and drove luxury cars, I'd chosen a different path. I'd always been the responsible one, the one who saved money, lived within my means, and helped others when they needed it. The Mitchell family had always been close-knit, or so I thought. Growing up in Connecticut, we'd spent summers at our grandparents' lake house, winters skiing in Vermont, and every holiday gathered around Mom and Dad's massive dining table. But something shifted after college. As Madison and Connor's careers took off, and mine stayed steady but unremarkable, I noticed a change in how they treated me. It started small. Group texts I'd somehow been left out of, dinner plans made without consulting me. Then came the vacations. The first time, I'd genuinely been too busy with tax season to join them in Aspen. The second time, they claimed they'd mentioned the Bahamas trip, but I had no memory of the conversation. This third time, seeing them board a private jet to Bora, a destination we'd all dreamed about since watching a documentary together as kids, felt like a deliberate exclusion. The morning after seeing Madison's photo, I called my mother, Patricia Mitchell. She answered on the 3rd ring, and I could hear waves in the background. "Hi, honey. How are you?" Her voice was bright, too bright. "Mom, I saw Madison's post. You're all in Bora Bora?" There was a pause. "Oh, Natalie, we thought you'd be too busy with work. You know how you are during quarter end." "It's July, Mom. Quarter end was 2 weeks ago." "Well, Connor said he tried to call you about it, but you never answered." I scrolled through my call history. Nothing from Connor in the past month. "When did he call?" "I'm not sure, sweetie. You know how these things come together at the last minute. We assumed you couldn't afford the time off anyway." Couldn't afford it. The words stung more than she probably intended. Or maybe she did intend them. The elephant in the room had always been money, or rather, my perceived lack of it compared to my siblings. "The overtime pay from tax season has been really good," I said quietly. "I could have afforded it." "Oh, honey, I didn't mean it like that. Listen, we're about to go snorkeling. Can we talk when I get back?" After hanging up, I sat in my apartment, looking around at my simple but comfortable life. My furniture was from IKEA, not restoration hardware like Madison's. My car was a reliable Honda Civic, not Connor's Tesla. But I had something they didn't seem to value: independence and financial discipline. My savings account was healthy, my credit score impeccable, and I'd been quietly investing in index funds for years. That evening, I met my best friend Sophia for dinner at our favorite Thai place. She could tell something was wrong the moment I sat down. "They did it again, didn't they?" she asked, not needing clarification. I nodded, showing her Madison's latest Instagram story. The family toasting at sunset, the overwater bungalows glowing. In the background, "Natalie, this is the 3rd time. It's not accidental anymore." "I know," I admitted. "But what am I supposed to do? Confront them? Beg to be included?" Sophia leaned forward. "Or you could stop waiting for their approval. You've got the means, right? That promotion you got last year? The bonus?" She was right. 6 months ago, I'd been promoted to senior accountant, complete with a substantial raise and bonus. I'd tucked most of it away, following my usual conservative approach. But maybe it was time to be a little less conservative. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking it's time you stopped living small just because they expect you to. Show them what you're capable of." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I'd made myself smaller to fit into the box my family had created. For me, the practical one, the frugal one, the one who didn't need luxury or adventure. But that wasn't who I really was. It was who they'd decided I was. The next morning, I woke up with unusual clarity. I opened my laptop and started researching. If my family thought I couldn't afford their lifestyle, maybe it was time to show them differently. But I wouldn't just match their vacation, I'd exceed. And my fingers hovered over the keyboard as I typed, "Luxury Resorts Bora Bora." Then I stopped. No, I wasn't going to follow in their footsteps. I typed again, "Most exclusive private islands rental." What came up made my heart race. Private islands in Fiji, the Maldives, the Seychelles. Places that made Bora Bora look ordinary. The prices were staggering, but as I did the math, I realized something shocking. I could actually afford this. Years of careful saving, smart investing, and living below my means had given me more financial freedom than even I had realized. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about breaking free from the narrative my family had written for me. They saw me as the boring accountant who couldn't possibly appreciate or afford the finer things in life. They'd never bothered to ask about my dreams, my achievements, or my capabilities. I spent the next few days putting together an itinerary that would make their Bora Bora trip look like a budget vacation. A private island in the Maldives for 10 days. A personal chef. A yacht for island hopping. Scuba diving with whale sharks. Helicopter transfers. The total cost was more than I'd ever spent on anything, but it was still within my means, something my family would never suspect. As I clicked Book Now on the most expensive vacation of my life, my phone buzzed. It was Connor, finally reaching out. His text was brief. "Mom says you're upset about Bora Bora. Don't be dramatic. You know these trips aren't really your thing anyway." I stared at the message, feeling a mixture of anger and liberation. Not my thing? They'd never even asked what my thing was. They'd simply decided for me, year after year, exclusion after exclusion. Instead of responding to Connor, I called my boss, Raymond Chen. "Ray, I need to talk to you about taking some time off." "Quarter end is done, Natalie. You've earned it. How long are you thinking?" 2 weeks, starting next Monday." 2 weeks? You haven't taken more than 3 days off in the 2 years you've been here. Everything okay? "Everything's perfect. I just realized it's time I started living a little." After ending the call, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was making a decision purely for myself, not based on what my family expected or what I thought I should do. That evening, I met with Marcus, my financial advisor, to ensure this splurge wouldn't derail my long-term plans. He pulled up my portfolio, did some quick calculations, and smiled. "Natalie, you could take this trip twice a year for the next decade and still retire comfortably at 55. You've been incredibly disciplined. It's okay to enjoy the fruits of your labor." His words gave me the final push I needed. This wasn't about being irresponsible or proving a point through reckless spending. It was about recognizing my own worth and giving myself permission to experience life fully. As the week progressed, I threw myself into preparation. I bought new clothes, designer resort wear that made me feel like a different person. I booked spa treatments for the trip. I even splurged on a first-class ticket, something I'd always considered an unnecessary expense. My apartment began to transform as packages arrived. Luxury luggage replaced my old duffel bag. High-end sunglasses sat next to my usual drugstore readers. Each purchase felt like shedding an old skin, revealing someone I'd always been but never allowed myself to show. Sophia came over to help me pack, whistling appreciatively at my new wardrobe. "This doesn't even look like your closet anymore." "That's the point," I said, folding a silk sarong. "I'm tired of being the person they think I am." "And who are you really?" I paused, considering the question. "Someone who worked her ass off to build a stable life. Someone who chose responsibility over flash but still dreams big. Someone who deserves to be included, not because of what I earn or spend, but because I'm family." As my departure date approached, I found myself checking my phone less and less. The family group chat, the one I was actually included in, was full of photos from Bora Bora. Pictures of elaborate dinners, sunset cruises, spa days. Madison posted a photo of a $500 bottle of champagne with the caption, "Living our best life." Little did they know that in just a few days, I'd be sipping champagne on my own private beach, with an entire island at my disposal. The thought should have filled me with smug satisfaction, but instead, I felt something else. Sadness. This wasn't really about one-upping them. It was about finally giving myself permission to live fully, regardless of their opinions or expectations. The night before my flight, I sat in my apartment, looking at the confirmation emails for my trip. Private island resort, personal butler, chef-prepared meals, activities I'd only dreamed about. Part of me still couldn't believe I was doing this. My phone rang. It was my father, William Mitchell. Unlike my mother, he rarely called, preferring to let Patricia handle family communications. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. "Natalie, your mother mentioned you were upset about the trip." "Hi. Dad, I'm not upset. Just disappointed, I guess." He sighed. "You know how these things go. Your siblings they move in different circles. We didn't think you'd be comfortable." "Comfortable? Dad, I'm your daughter. Since when did comfort become more important than inclusion?" There was a long pause. "You're right. We should have invited you. But honey, these trips, they're expensive. We didn't want you to feel pressured to spend money you don't have." I almost laughed. The assumption that I couldn't afford it, that I was somehow less capable than my siblings, was so ingrained they couldn't see past it. "Dad, I appreciate your concern. But maybe next time, let me decide what I can or can't afford." After we hung up, I made one final check of my travel documents. Passport, resort confirmation, first-class tickets. Everything was in order. Tomorrow, I'd begin a journey that was about more than just a luxury vacation. It was about reclaiming my narrative, stepping out of the shadow my family had cast over me, and embracing the life I'd worked so hard to build. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I thought about what the next 10 days would bring. I wasn't just taking a trip. I was taking control of my story. And this time, I was the one writing it. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family was in Bora Bora, living what they thought was the ultimate dream vacation, while I was about to embark on something that would redefine what luxury meant to all of us. But it wasn't about showing them up anymore. It was about showing myself what I was capable of when I stopped living according to their limitations. Tomorrow, everything will change. Not because of the money I was spending or the exclusive destination I was heading to, but because I was finally choosing to see myself as worthy of the very best life had to offer. And that, more than any private island or first-class flight, was the real luxury I'd been denying myself all these years. The first-class lounge at Denver International Airport was a world I'd walked past countless times but never entered. Now, settling into a plush leather chair with a glass of complimentary champagne, I felt like an imposter. The flight attendant who checked my ticket smiled warmly. "First time in first class, Ms. Mitchell?" "Is it that obvious?" She laughed. "You're actually looking around and appreciating it." Most of our regulars barely glance up from their laptops. Enjoy every moment. Her words stayed with me as I boarded the plane. The suite, because that's what it was, not just a seat, was larger than my office cubicle. As I settled in, my phone buzzed with messages from the family group chat. Madison had posted a video of her parasailing in Bora Bora. The caption read, "Some people are meant for adventure, others for spreadsheets." The flight attendant appeared with pre-flight champagne. Celebrating something special? You could say that. I'm celebrating becoming someone new. During the 24-hour journey with a layover in Dubai, I had time to reflect. The last time I'd seen my siblings in person was at Christmas. We'd gathered at our parents' house in Greenwich, and the conversation had revolved around Madison's latest real estate conquests and Connor's startup's Series B funding. When Dad asked about my work, Connor interrupted with, "Dad, nobody wants to hear about tax codes during dinner." I'd laughed along, playing my assigned role. But now, 35,000 feet above the earth, sipping champagne in my private suite, I wondered why I'd accepted that dismissal so easily. The Dubai layover was an experience in itself. The first-class lounge was like a luxury hotel, complete with a spa, fine dining, and private sleeping rooms. I indulged in a massage and a gourmet meal, marveling at how different travel could be when you weren't cramming yourself into economy seats and eating airport fast food. As I reboarded for the final leg, to mail, I checked social media. My family's Bora Bora posts continued. Cocktails on the beach, group photos at dinner, videos of their overwater bungalow. The comments from friends and extended family were all variations of living the dream and perfect family, perfect family. If only they knew. Landing in the Maldives, I was greeted by something I'd only seen in movies, a personal representative holding a sign with my name. "Welcome, Ms. Mitchell. I'm Ahmed from Keha Private Island. Your seaplane is ready for immediate departure." The seaplane ride was surreal. As we flew over countless tiny islands surrounded by crystal-clear turquoise water, Ahmed pointed out various resorts. "Many celebrities choose our island for complete privacy," he mentioned casually. "Last month, we hosted a tech billionaire. Very nice gentleman, though he spent most of his time on conference calls." "Well, my phone is staying off," I declared. Ahmed smiled approvingly. "Excellent choice, madam." The island came into view, and my breath caught. It was smaller than I'd imagined, but absolutely pristine. White sand beaches, swaying palms, and a collection of elegant villas. As we circled for landing, I could see my accommodation, a massive overwater villa at the end of a private jetty. "The entire island is yours for the duration of your stay," Ahmed explained, as we touched down on the crystal-clear lagoon. "Current occupancy is just you, our staff of 12, and whatever wildlife chooses to visit." A sleek boat transferred us from the seaplane to the island's dock, where a line of staff waited. The general manager, James, stepped forward. "Ms. Mitchell, welcome to your private paradise. We're honored to have you." The tour of the island was overwhelming. My villa wasn't just a room. It was a 3-bedroom palace on stilts with a private pool, outdoor shower, personal spa room, and glass floor panels for viewing marine life. The main island housed a gourmet restaurant, fully equipped gym, spa facility, and even a small cinema. Your personal chef, Marie, will prepare whatever you desire, whenever you desire it, James explained. Your butler, Hassan, is available 24/7. The yacht is ready for island-hopping excursions, and we have world-class diving instructors on standby. That evening, as I dined alone on the deck of my villa, fresh-caught lobster prepared by a Michelin-starred chef while sunset painted the sky in impossible colors, I felt a strange mix of emotions. This was beyond anything my family was experiencing in Bora Bora, yet I was here alone. I pulled out my phone for the first time since arriving. 53 unread messages in the family chat. I scrolled through quickly. More photos, inside jokes, I wasn't part of, plans being made without any thought of including me. Then I saw a message from my mother in our private chat. "Honey, Connor mentioned you've taken time off work. Everything okay? Not like you to be spontaneous." I typed and deleted several responses before settling on, "Everything's perfect, Mom. Just decided it was time for my own adventure." The next morning, I woke to the sound of gentle waves and the sight of baby sharks swimming beneath my glass floor panels. Hassan had already prepared fresh fruit and coffee on my deck. As I sat there in my silk robe, watching the sunrise, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete peace. My first full day was dedicated to water activities. The diving instructor, Paolo, took me to a nearby reef where we swam with manta rays. The experience was magical, these gentle giants gliding past us with graceful movements. Underwater, surrounded by vibrant coral and tropical fish, I forgot about family drama, about being excluded, about proving anything to anyone. That afternoon, I took the yacht to a deserted sandbank, literally a tiny island that appeared during low tide. The crew set up a luxury picnic with champagne and gourmet treats while I had an entire beach to myself. Lying on the pristine sand, I laughed at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, living a fantasy that exceeded anything my family had ever experienced, yet they probably assumed I was home working on spreadsheets. On my third day, I decided to document my experience, not to show off, but to capture these moments for myself. I took photos of my breakfast served on my private deck, the infinity pool merging with the ocean, the spectacular sunsets. But I didn't post them. This experience was mine alone. During a spa treatment that afternoon, a traditional Maldivian healing session, the therapist asked what brought me to the islands. "I'm reclaiming my story," I told her. "My family sees me as one thing, but I'm choosing to be something else." She smiled knowingly. Sometimes we must travel far to find ourselves. That evening, Marie prepared a 7-course tasting menu just for me. Each dish was a work of art, paired with wines I'd only read about in magazines. As I dined under the stars, with the ocean gently lapping beneath my villa, I thought about my family's group dinners in Bora Bora. Were they enjoying their meals more because they were together? Or was the exclusion of one member something that hung over them, unacknowledged? On day 4, I tried something I'd always wanted to do: kitesurfing. The instructor, Leo, was patient as I struggled with the basics. "You're thinking too much," he observed. "Let go of control. Trust the wind." His words resonated beyond the sport. I'd spent so long controlling every aspect of my life, being responsible, staying within the lines my family had drawn for me. As I finally caught the wind and glided across the water, I felt a freedom I'd never experienced. That night, I sat in my villa's outdoor bathtub, surrounded by candles, watching the stars. The Milky Way was visible here, away from city lights. I thought about calling Sophia to share this moment, but decided against it. Some experiences were meant to be solitary. The 5th day brought an unexpected challenge. James approached me during breakfast with news that a storm system was approaching. "Nothing dangerous," he assured me, "but we'll need to secure some activities for the next day or two. The good news is that storms here create spectacular displays." He wasn't wrong. That evening, I watched from my covered deck as nature put on a show. Lightning danced across the horizon while rain created a symphony on the ocean's surface. The sea. Power and beauty of it made me feel small, but in a good way. Part of something larger than family dynamics or personal slights. During the storm, confined to my villa, I finally allowed myself to process the emotions I'd been avoiding. The hurt of being excluded, the anger at being dismissed, the sadness of feeling like an outsider in my own family. But also, the pride in what I'd accomplished, the joy of this incredible experience, and the growing confidence in my own worth. On D. Day 6, with the storm past and the ocean calmer than ever, I took a sunset cruise on the yacht. The crew had prepared a floating dinner, a table set up in the shallow water of a sandbank, lit by torches. As I dined with my feet in the warm ocean, watching the sun paint the sky in oranges and purples, I realized something profound. I wasn't trying to prove anything to my family anymore. This journey had become about proving something to myself. That night, I checked my messages again. The family chat showed they were on their last day in Bora Bora. Madison had posted a group photo with the caption, "Already planning next year's trip, maybe Europe?" The casual assumption that next year would be the same, them together, me excluded, no longer stung. I was already living beyond their limitations, experiencing things they couldn't imagine. Day 7 brought new adventures. Hassan arranged for a local cultural experience, visiting a nearby inhabited island to learn traditional Maldivian cooking. The elderly woman who taught me, Aisha, spoke limited English but communicated through smiles and gestures. As we prepared Mas Huni, a traditional tuna dish, together, she pointed to my designer resort wear and expensive jewelry, then to her simple dress, and shrugged with a smile that seemed to say, "Different outside, same inside." Her wisdom wasn't lost on me. I'd spent so much energy trying to fit into my family's definition of success, then rebelling against it, that I'd lost sight of who I really was beneath it all. That afternoon, while snorkeling in the house reef, I encountered a sea turtle. We swam together for what felt like hours, the turtle seemingly unbothered by my presence. There was something profound about sharing space with this ancient creature, both of us visitors in the vast ocean. As my trip entered its final days, I found myself dreading the return to reality. Not because I'd become addicted to luxury, but because I'd found a peace here that I wasn't sure how to maintain back home. On day 8, I finally decided to share something. I posted a single photo on Instagram, not of the luxury or exclusive location, but a simple shot of my feet in the sand with the caption, "Sometimes you have to create your own path." The response was immediate. Friends liked and commented with, "Curiosity. Where are you? This doesn't look like Denver." But it was the family reactions that interested me most. Madison was first. "Wait, where is this?" Connor followed. "Did you actually take a vacation?" My mother called within an hour. "Natalie, where are you? Your photo. Does it look tropical?" "I'm in the Maldives, Mom." "The Maldives? Alone? But how? Why didn't you tell us?" "The same reason you didn't tell me about Bora Bora until you were already there. Sometimes plans just come together." There was a long pause. Are you doing this because of us? Because we didn't invite you?" "No, Mom. I'm doing this because of me. Because I finally realized I don't need anyone's permission to live my life fully." That evening, Marie prepared my favorite meal from the week, grilled reef fish with local spices. As I dined, Hassan shared stories about other guests he'd served. "Many come here to escape," he said, "but you, madam, seem to have come here to find something." He was right. I'd found my own definition of success, my own capacity for adventure, my own worthiness of luxury and experience. The excluded, overlooked accountant was a character I no longer needed to play. On my penultimate day, I took a morning yoga class on the beach, followed by a sailing lesson. The instructor, Marcus, taught me to read the wind, adjust the sails, and trust my instincts. As we glided across the lagoon, I thought about how much of my life I'd spent adjusting to others' winds instead of setting my own course. That afternoon, I video called Sophia. Her jaw dropped as I gave her a virtual tour of my villa. "Natalie, this is insane! Your family must be losing their minds." "Actually, they don't know the details yet. And honestly, it doesn't matter what they think anymore." As my final full day dawned, I decided to experience everything one last time. Early morning diving to see the reef waking up. Breakfast on a floating platform in the lagoon. A final spa treatment. Lunch on the sandbank. Kite surfing in the afternoon. And for dinner, James arranged something special. A table set up on the highest point of the island with 360-degree views of the ocean. As I sat there, watching my last Maldivian sunset, I reflected on the journey. 10 days ago, I'd been hurt and angry, seeking validation through extravagance. But what I'd found was so much more valuable: self-acceptance, confidence, and the knowledge that I was enough, just as I was. The seaplane would come tomorrow to take me back to reality. But I wasn't the same person who'd arrived. I'd shed the skin of the overlooked sister, the responsible accountant, the one who accepted others' limitations as her own. In this paradise, I'd found my own worth, and that was something no one could take away. That night, I sat on my deck one last time, feet dangling in the warm water, stars reflecting on the calm surface. Tomorrow I'd return to Denver, to my work, to family dynamics that might never change. But I would face it all differently, because now I knew I wasn't just capable of living their dream. I was capable of creating my own. The seaplane lifted, off from the crystal-clear lagoon, and I watched my private paradise shrink into a perfect green jewel set in endless blue. Hassan had presented me with a handcrafted box containing sand from the island. "So you always remember where you found yourself," he'd said. Now, clutching that box, I prepared for re-entry into my old life. Though I was no longer the same person, the journey home gave me time to organize more than just photos. I'd taken over 1,000 pictures but decided to create a simple album of 20, not the most luxurious shots, but the moments that had changed me. The sunrise yoga, the cooking lesson with Aisha, swimming alongside the sea turtle. These were my treasures. During my layover in Dubai, my phone exploded with notifications as I reconnected to the world. The family group chat had over 200 messages. Scrolling through, I watched their Bora Bora trip end and speculation about my whereabouts begin. Madison had even started a separate thread with Connor. "Did you know Nat was going somewhere?" Mom's freaking out. There were 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and dozens of texts, the most recent from Madison. "Natalie, this isn't funny anymore. Where are you?" I typed a simple response to the group. "Just landed in Dubai, home tomorrow. Hope you all had a wonderful time in Bora Bora." The responses were immediate. Madison: "Dubai? What were you doing in Dubai?" Connor: "Wait, you've been traveling? Why didn't you say anything?" Mom: "Natalie Elizabeth Mitchell, you call me right now." Instead of calling, I posted one photo to the family chat, a sunset shot from my villa's deck, the infinity pool merging with the ocean. No caption. Then I turned off my phone again. The first-class lounge in Dubai felt different this time. Wasn't an imposter anymore. I ordered champagne without hesitation, selected spa services with confidence, and settled into my suite for the final leg home with the bearing of someone who belonged there. The transformation wasn't about luxury. It was about finally believing I deserve good things. Landing in Denver felt surreal. My Civic waited in long-term parking, looking smaller than I remembered, but no less reliable. As I drove home, the Colorado mountains that usually comforted me seemed confining after the endless ocean horizons. Apartment welcomed me back unchanged, but I saw it differently now. It wasn't shabby or less than. It was chosen. I'd selected each piece of furniture carefully, lived within my means intentionally, built this life consciously. The trip hadn't made me dissatisfied with my choices. It had validated them. I'd barely unpacked when the doorbell rang. Madison stood there, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, Bora Bora tan glowing, face a mix of confusion and indignation. 37 messages, Natalie. I sent you 37 messages. Come in, I said calmly. Want some tea? She followed me to the kitchen, taking in my modest space with fresh eyes. So, Dubai? Really? Some kind of work conference? I smiled, preparing 2 cups of jasmine tea. Not exactly. Then what? And what was that photo? That didn't look like any hotel pool I've ever seen. It wasn't a hotel. It was my private villa on my private island in the Maldives. Madison's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. Right, very funny. Seriously, what's going on? Mom thinks you had some kind of breakdown. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo album I'd created, and slid it across the counter. Swipe through. Her expression shifted from skepticism to shock as she viewed image after image. The seaplane arrival, the staff greeting, the villa tour, the private beach, the yacht, the underwater shots with manta rays. This can't be real. How did you... do you know what something like this costs? About 3 times what your Bora Bora trip cost, actually. She looked up sharply. How could you possibly afford this? The same way you afford your lifestyle, Madison. By working, saving, and choosing to spend my money on what matters to me. The difference is, I don't flaunt it or judge others for their choices. Her mouth opened and closed several times. But you're an accountant. A senior accountant, with investments, and a promotion you never asked about, and a life you know nothing about because you've never been interested. Madison sank onto my IKEA bar stool, still staring at the photos. I don't understand. Why? Didn't you tell us? Why do this alone? Why didn't you tell me about Bora Bora, or Aspen, or the Bahamas? That's different. You thought I couldn't afford it, or wouldn't enjoy it, or didn't deserve it. Right? Her silence was enough. I did this alone because I've been alone in this family for years. You and Connor decided who I was without ever asking, and I let you. That ends now. Madison was still processing when my phone rang. Connor. Nat? Madison just texted me something. Insane. Says you spent a fortune on some private island? What's this about? It's about me choosing to live my life instead of the version you all created for me. But why waste money like that? It's not like you. The Nat I know would never... The Nat you know doesn't exist, Connor. She never did. That was just the box you put me in because it made you comfortable. The conference call with my parents came that evening. I could hear them struggling to understand. Their responsible daughter, acting so out of character. Except it wasn't out of character. It was the most authentic thing I'd ever done. Sweetheart, my mother began carefully. We're concerned. This isn't like you. Spending so much money, being secretive. You mean like being secretive about family vacations? Like spending money on Bora Bora while assuming I couldn't afford to join? We didn't want to burden you? No, Mom. You didn't want to include me. There's a difference. My father's voice cut in. Now, Natalie, that's not fair. We've always... What, Dad? Always included me? Always valued my presence? Always seen me as an equal part of this family? Because from where I'm sitting, you've always seen me as less than. Less successful? Less interesting? Less deserving. The silence stretched until my mother whispered, We never meant to make you feel that way. But you did. Every excluded trip, every dismissed achievement, every assumption about what I could or couldn't afford, they all said the same thing. Natalie doesn't belong in our version of success. Over the next few days, the family dynamics shifted seismically. Connor called separately, admitting he'd been intimidated by my financial discipline, assuming it meant I judged his flashier lifestyle. Madison confessed she'd excluded me partly, from embarrassment. My simple life made her question her own materialistic choices. But it was the conversation with my parents that cut deepest. They revealed they'd been protecting themselves, not me. My independence and self-sufficiency made them feel unneeded, so they'd gravitated toward the children who seemed to want their lifestyle, their approval, their inclusion. You never seemed to need us, my father admitted. Madison and Connor always asked for advice, wanted our input. You just handled everything yourself. I handled everything myself because you never offered to help me. You assumed I didn't need you instead of asking what I needed. The real shift came when I returned to work. Ray noticed immediately. You look different, good different. That vacation did wonders. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a reclamation. I threw myself back into work with new energy, but also new boundaries. I left the office by 6. I took lunch breaks. I said no to weekend work unless it was truly critical. My colleagues adapted, and surprisingly, my performance improved. The confidence I'd found translated into better client relationships and clearer decision-making. 2 weeks. After my return, Madison called with an invitation. We're having a family dinner, a real one. Will you come? I agreed, curious about this attempt at reconciliation. The dinner was at my parents' house, but felt different from previous gatherings. For one thing, they'd waited to plan it until I could attend. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. As we sat around the familiar dining table, Connor raised his glass. I think we owe Natalie an apology, and probably a toast. To the family member we overlooked, who turned out to be the boldest of us all. I smiled but shook my head. I don't need apologies. I need change. I need you all to see me, really see me. Not your assumption of who I am. Fair enough, Madison said. So tell us, who are you? For the first time in years, I felt free to answer honestly. I talked about my work, not just as an accountant, but as someone who helped people navigate complex financial situations. I shared my investment strategies, my long-term goals, my dreams of early retirement and travel. I told them about causes I supported, books I loved, adventures I planned. They listened, really listened, with surprise and growing respect. Connor even asked for investment advice, while Madison admitted she'd misjudged my career entirely. I thought you chose accounting because you were risk-averse, she confessed. I chose it because I'm risk-intelligent. There's a difference between being afraid and being smart. The photo album from my trip made its way around the table. This time, I shared stories, not to impress, but to connect. I told them about Aisha's cooking lesson, the storm's beauty, the peace of sunrise, yoga. They began to understand that luxury wasn't the point. Growth was. As dinner wound down, my mother made an announcement. We've been thinking about next year's family trip. We'd like your input, Natalie. All of our input, actually. Maybe we could plan something together? It was an olive branch, and I appreciated it, but I'd also learned something important. I appreciate that, Mom, but I need you to understand. I might say yes, or I might choose to travel alone again. Either way, it's not personal. It's about what I need at that moment. That's fair, my father said. We just want the chance to include you. Over the following months, the family dynamic slowly recalibrated. We started a new tradition, monthly dinners where each sibling shared something meaningful from their life. Not achievements or acquisitions, but actual experiences and feelings. Connor talked about the stress of running a startup. Madison admitted her real estate success came with burnout. I shared the joy of helping a young couple buy their first home through careful financial planning. These dinners revealed something profound. We'd all been playing roles, trapped in the personalities assigned to us years ago. My journey had given the others permission to break free, too. 6 months after my Maldives trip, an opportunity arose at work, leading a new international division that would require extensive travel. The old Natalie might have deemed it too risky, too far from the safe path. But the woman who'd watched sunset from a private island, who'd swum with manta rays and learned to kiteboard, submitted her application without hesitation. I got the position. The salary increase was substantial, but more importantly, it aligned with who I'd become. Someone unafraid of horizons, comfortable with luxury and simplicity alike, confident in my worth. The family group chat buzzed with congratulations. Madison offered to help me apartment hunt in London. Connor shared contacts from his international network. My parents offered genuine pride without qualification. The excluded member had become integral, not by changing to fit their mold, but by breaking it entirely. A year later, I found myself planning another solo trip, this time to Patagonia for hiking and adventure. When I mentioned it at a family dinner, Madison asked, "Want company?" I considered it. Maybe, but I'm going regardless, and I'm doing it my way. Fair enough. Just keep us in the loop this time? I laughed. I'll think about it. The truth was I'd discovered something more valuable than any luxury resort or exclusive experience: the freedom to choose. To say yes or no based on my desires, not others' expectations. To include or exclude myself as I saw fit. To live fully without apology or explanation. My private island adventure had started as a response to exclusion, a way to prove my worth, but it had become something far more significant. A declaration of independence, a claiming of space, a recognition that the only person who needed to validate my life was me. The Maldives photos still cycled through my computer screensaver, reminders of turquoise waters and personal revelations, but the real souvenir wasn't the images or even the memories. It was the woman who'd returned, someone who knew her worth, set her boundaries, and chose her path without seeking permission. Family. Vacations would come and go. Some I'd join, others I'd skip for my own adventures. The difference now was that both choices came from strength, not hurt. I'd learned that being excluded from someone else's dream wasn't a tragedy. It was an invitation to create my own. And that's exactly what I intended to keep doing. One choice, one adventure, one authentic moment at a time. The overlooked accountant had become the author of her own story, and she was just getting started. 3 years had passed since my transformative Maldives escape. My London flat overlooked the Thames, a far cry from my Denver apartment. As director of international accounts at my firm's UK branch, I'd built a life that would have been unrecognizable to the woman who once ate leftover Chinese takeout while scrolling through family vacation photos. My assistant, Fiona, knocked on my office door. "The Singapore team is ready for your call, and your brother left another voicemail." Connor had been trying to reach me for days. His tech startup had expanded to Europe, and suddenly, having a sister in international finance seemed valuable. I'd call him back, but on my timeline, not his. The Singapore call went smoothly. We secured another major client, adding to my division's impressive portfolio. As I wrapped up, my phone buzzed with a notification that made me pause. A calendar. Reminder for the annual Mitchell family vacation planning dinner. Tonight, via video call. Since the Maldives trip, family dynamics had evolved significantly. We'd had genuinely inclusive vacations, a ski trip to Whistler where I'd actually been consulted about dates, a Mediterranean cruise where everyone compromised on destinations. But old patterns died hard, and I'd noticed subtle reversions lately. Madison forgetting to include me in preliminary discussions, Connor making assumptions about my availability. That evening, I joined the video call from my home office. My family appeared in their respective squares, parents from Connecticut, Madison from her Manhattan penthouse, Connor from his San Francisco loft. The contrast in our backgrounds told our stories. My parents' traditional colonial decor, Madison's modern minimalism, Connor's tech bro aesthetic, and my own mix of British elegance and personal mementos from travels. "There she is," Mom exclaimed. "How's London, sweetheart?" "Brilliant, as they say here. Just closed a major deal with a Singaporean firm." Always working, Connor interjected. Some things never change. I smiled, recognizing the old narrative, attempting to reassert itself. Actually, I just returned from a weekend in the Cotswolds. Found this amazing little pub that dates back to the 1400s. Madison leaned forward. Speaking of travel, we need to decide on this year's destination. I've been researching. Before we start, I interrupted. I should mention I have some constraints. This year, I'm leading a retreat in Bali for our top clients in August, and I've already booked a trek to Everest Base Camp in October. The silence was familiar, yet different. 3 years ago, it would have been dismissive. Now it held surprise and perhaps a hint of the old exclusion reflex. Everest Base Camp? Dad said. That's quite ambitious. It's been on my list for years. I've been training with a mountaineering group here in London. We do weekend climbs in Scotland to prepare. Connor cleared his throat. Well, maybe we could work around your schedule. Or, I said gently, maybe we could acknowledge that we all have full lives now. Instead of one big trip, what about meeting for long weekends when it works for everyone? Madison's expression shifted. But the big family vacation is tradition. Traditions evolve, Maddie. Remember when the tradition was excluding me? The words landed with weight. We'd come far, but sometimes truth needed stating plainly. Mom intervened. Natalie has, a point. We've all got more commitments now. Maybe flexibility is better. As the call progressed, I watched my family grapple with change. They'd wanted me included, but on their terms. My independence still challenged their narrative of how family worked. When we ended the call with plans to think about it, I knew I'd planted necessary seeds. Later that evening, I met my friend Priya for dinner at our favorite Indian restaurant. She was one of several close friends I'd made in London, people who knew me without the baggage of family history. How'd the family call go? She asked, pouring wine. Progressive regression, I laughed. They're trying, but old habits surface. They still see my independence as rejection rather than growth. Maybe because your growth highlights their stagnation? Priya had a way of cutting to truth. I'd shared my family history with her during a girls' trip to Morocco the previous year. She'd observed that my transformation had created ripples they were still navigating. Connor's been calling, I admitted. His company's expanding here and suddenly I'm valuable to his network. Will you help him? Of course, but on professional terms, not as the little sister who should be grateful for attention. The next morning brought an unexpected call from Madison. Her voice lacked its usual confidence. Nat, I need advice. Real advice. Not family placating. What's going on? I'm drowning. The real estate business is booming, but I'm miserable. I saw your Instagram stories from the Cotswolds, and I realized I haven't taken a real break in 2 years. Even our family vacations are working holidays. For me, this vulnerability was new. What do you need, Maddie? How did you do it? Break free from what everyone expected? Choose your own path? I thought carefully before responding. I stopped waiting for permission. But Madison, your journey won't look like mine. What makes you happy? Not successful, happy. We talked for an hour. Madison admitted she'd been competing with an image of success rather than pursuing actual fulfillment. The conversation felt like a breakthrough, a real connection beyond our assigned roles. That weekend, I flew to Scotland for a training climb with my mountaineering group. As we ascended Ben Nevis, I reflected on how physical challenges had become my new luxury. The Maldives had taught me I deserved indulgence. These mountains taught me I deserved adventure. At base camp that night, sharing stories with fellow climbers, my satellite phone buzzed. A text from Connor. In London next week for business. Dinner? My treat. Want to hear about the Singapore deal? I smiled. He wanted to hear about my work. Not as background noise to his own achievements, but as something worthy of discussion. Growth happened slowly, but it happened. Upon returning to London, I found an email that surprised me. My parents were planning a visit. Just the two of them, independent of any family vacation. "We realized we've never seen your life there," Mom wrote. "Would love to visit if you're available." I called them immediately. "I'd love that. I'll show you my London." "Your London?" Dad repeated. "I like that. Not tourist London, but your actual life." Their visit 2 weeks later was revelatory. I took them to my local markets, introduced them to friends, and showed them my climbing gym. They met my book club, joined my Thursday pub quiz team, saw the community I'd built. Over dinner at my flat, Mom grew thoughtful. "I understand now why you needed distance. You couldn't become this person inside our assumptions." Dad nodded. "We boxed you in with our own limitations. Your mother was afraid to travel alone. I was afraid of financial risk. We projected those fears onto you." "I get it now," I said. "But I'm not running from you anymore. I'm running toward my own life." Connor arrived the following week. Our dinner was professional but warm. He asked detailed questions about my Singapore strategies, taking notes. Toward the end, he surprised me. "I've been thinking about your flexible vacation idea. What if we did quarterly meetups? Different locations. Whoever can make it makes it. No pressure for full attendance." "You're serious?" "That Maldives trip changed you, Nat. But it changed us too. Made us realize we'd been playing these rigid roles. Madison's in therapy now, did you know? Working on why she needs constant validation. I'm questioning why I equated success with exclusivity." This was the Connor I'd glimpsed in childhood, before success calcified into persona. I'd love quarterly meetups. Smaller groups might mean deeper connections. The first quarterly gathering happened in September, just Madison and me in Lisbon. She'd taken a real vacation, closing her real estate office for a week. We wandered ancient streets, sampled port wine, and talked until dawn. Without the full family dynamic, we discovered genuine friendship. "I want what you have," she admitted one evening, watching sunset from a mirador. "What's that?" "Freedom. Not just to travel, but to be yourself without apology. You have it, Maddie. You just have to claim it." October brought my Everest base, Camp Trek. The journey was grueling, humbling, and spectacular. At 17,598 feet, gasping in thin air, I thought about that woman in Denver feeling excluded from Bora Bora. If she could see me now, choosing challenge over comfort, adventure over approval. My summit photo went to the family group chat. The responses were immediate and enthusiastic. Mom wrote, "Our daughter the mountaineer." Connor added, "Next quarterly in Nepal? I'll bring oxygen tanks." The transformation was collective now. My independence had initially threatened them, but gradually it had inspired them. Madison took a sabbatical to write, something she'd dreamed of since college. Connor started mentoring young entrepreneurs instead of just accumulating wealth. My parents began their own travel adventures, sometimes calling for advice about destinations. That December, I hosted Christmas at my London flat. The whole family came, experiencing my adopted city through fresh eyes. We ice skated at Somerset House, watched theater in the West End, explored Borough Market. But the best moments were quiet ones in my home, cooking together, sharing stories by the fireplace, existing without roles or expectations. One evening, going through old photos, we found one from the Bora Bora trip I'd been excluded from. Instead of hurt, I felt gratitude. That exclusion had been a gift, forcing me to discover my own worth. "I need to thank you," I said suddenly. "For what?" Madison asked. "For leaving me out. It was the push I needed to stop waiting for inclusion and start creating my own experiences." Mom's eyes filled. "We never meant—" "I know. But sometimes the i.e. best gifts are unintentional." The new year brought unexpected opportunities. A headhunting firm approached me about a C-suite position with a global investment bank. The role would involve extensive travel, strategic leadership, and the kind of challenges I now craved. 3 years ago, I'd have deemed it too risky. Now I saw it as evolution. During negotiations, I flew to Singapore for final interviews. Between meetings, I found myself at Marina Bay Sands, looking out at the city skyline. My phone rang. Madison calling from New York. Guess what? I'm signing with a literary agent. My memoir about burnout in real estate. You inspired me to tell my real story. Maddie, that's incredible. We're all writing new stories now, aren't we? You started it with that Maldives trip. After accepting the new position, I had 2 months before starting. I decided to return to the Maldives, not to recreate the past, but to acknowledge the journey. I booked the same private island, curious how it would feel with 3 years of growth behind me. The seaplane approach was familiar, yet different. This time, I wasn't escaping exclusion. I was celebrating evolution. The staff remembered me, noting how I carried myself differently now. Where once I'd been proving worthiness, now I simply was worthy. I spent the week reflecting on the journey. That first trip had been about claiming space. This one was about appreciating growth. I wrote in my journal, swam with familiar fish, watched sunsets without needing to document them. Peace wasn't something I sought anymore. It traveled with me. On my final night, I received a group video call from my family. They'd gathered for Connor's birthday, raising glasses across time zones. To Natalie, Connor said, who taught us that exclusion is just an invitation to find your own way. To all of us, I corrected, for learning that family isn't about forced togetherness. It's about choosing each other freely. The call ended with plans for our next quarterly, my parents' cottage in Maine. Simple, unassuming, but now infused, with new appreciation for chosen moments together. As I prepared to leave paradise again, Ahmed from the resort staff asked if I'd return. Probably not here specifically, I admitted. But I'll keep exploring. The world's too big for repeat destinations when you're writing your own story. Back in London, preparing for my new role, I found a package from my parents. Inside was a photo album, not of family vacations, but of my solo adventures. Pictures I'd shared over 3 years, carefully curated. The inscription read, "To our daughter, who showed us that being apart sometimes brings us closer together." The final photo was from the Maldives, my first trip. But they'd added a caption I'd never seen. The beginning of Natalie's journey to herself. We're honored to witness it. I placed the album on my shelf next to the box of sand Hassan had given me. Mementos of transformation. Reminders that sometimes the greatest gift isn't inclusion. It's the courage to chart your own course and the wisdom to know when to sail alone and when to welcome others aboard. My new position will start soon. More challenges, more growth, more stories to write. The excluded accountant had become a global executive. The overlooked sister had become an inspiration. The woman who'd once waited for invitations now created her own occasions. And the family that had once left me out? They'd learned perhaps the most valuable lesson. That love isn't about keeping people close through obligation, but about celebrating their freedom to soar. 5 years had passed since Singapore. As Chief Global Investment Officer, I now split my time between London, New York, and Hong Kong. My corner office on the 47th floor of the Hong Kong IFC Tower commanded a view of Victoria Harbour that still took my breath away. But it was the email on my screen that truly captured my attention. Subject: Mitchell Family Foundation, Annual Retreat Planning. I smiled, remembering when our family communications had been about exclusive vacations I wasn't invited to. Now, we were planning the 3rd annual retreat for the foundation we'd created together, an initiative supporting young professionals from modest backgrounds in accessing international opportunities. My assistant, James, entered with tea. The board meeting materials are ready, and your sister's calling on line 2. Madison's voice carried excitement. Nat, the publisher, loves the new chapters. The book's really coming together. Her memoir, Breaking the Glass Ceiling, Finding the Glass Floor, had become a bestseller. The sequel focused on redefining success beyond material achievement, a journey we'd both taken. That's wonderful, Maddie. How's the writing retreat going? Incredible. Who knew Vermont in winter could be so inspiring? I'm actually considering buying a cabin here. Something simple, like what you described from your Patagonia trip. I laughed. The woman who once wouldn't consider accommodations under 5 stars now found joy in simplicity. Character development is a beautiful thing. Speaking of which, Connor's documentary just won another award. Connor had surprised everyone by leaving tech to become a filmmaker. His documentary series, Invisible Fortunes, highlighted individuals who'd found unconventional paths to fulfillment. He'd interviewed me for the pilot episode. After the call, I reviewed the foundation's portfolio. We'd funded 127 scholarships, supported 45 international internships, and launched mentorship programs in 12 countries. Each recipient reminded me of my younger self, talented but overlooked, ambitious but unsupported. That evening, I attended a gala for Asian financial leaders. As I networked effortlessly in my Armani gown, I thought of the woman who'd felt out of place in Denver's social circles. The transformation went deeper than career success. It was about owning my space in any room. Natalie Mitchell? A young woman approached hesitantly. I'm Sarah Chen. I was one of your foundation's first scholarship recipients. You probably don't remember NYU Shanghai, internship with Deutsche Bank, now working in sustainable finance. Of course I remember. Her eyes widened. You remember everyone, don't you? Everyone deserves to be remembered. Later, video chatting with my parents, I shared the encounter. They beamed with pride from their new home in Sedona, a downsized life that brought them unexpected joy. Your foundation interview tomorrow is with someone special, Mom said mysteriously. The Chai. Candidate from Ghana. I reviewed her application. Impressive. Dad chuckled. That's not the surprise. Madison's flying out to co-interview. She's considering funding a creative writing component. The next morning, Jakarta. I was touring potential foundation sites when Connor called from Los Angeles. Hey, Globetrotter. How's Indonesia? Humid, but fascinating. How's the new film? Actually, that's why I'm calling. Remember that private island resort you went to? The one that started everything? The Maldives? Of course. I want to film there. Document the place that changed our family's trajectory. Would you go back with me? I considered it. As long as it's not about recreating the past. That woman doesn't exist anymore. No, it's about evolution. The island as a metaphor for transformation. Plus, the owner wants to create a documentary about sustainable luxury tourism. Win-win. 2 months later, I found myself on a familiar seaplane with Connor and his film crew. The approach to the island stirred memories, but I felt no nostalgia for the hurt that had driven me here. That pain had been a catalyst, not a definition. Hassan greeted us at the dock, older but still gracious. Ms. Mitchell, welcome home, though you seem like a different person entirely. I am, Hassan, but I'm grateful for who I was then too. Connor filmed. I walked the beaches where I'd found myself. At the yoga platform, I demonstrated poses I'd learned since, from Himalayan ashrams, Bali retreats, meditation centers in Japan. Each practice had added layers to my understanding of peace. Tell me about that first morning yoga session, Connor prompted from behind the camera. I was terrible at it. Couldn't quiet my mind. Kept thinking about you all in Bora Bora, wondering why I wasn't enough. And now? Now I know I was always enough. I just needed distance to see it. We filmed at the Overwater Villa, where I'd spent hours alone with my thoughts. Connor asked about the moment everything shifted. It wasn't one moment. Transformation is gradual, like a tide wearing away rock. But there was a night I sat in that outdoor bathtub, looking at stars, when I realized I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just being. The island's owner, Raj, joined us for dinner. He'd built the resort after his own journey of self-discovery. Your story inspired us to create scholarship programs, he told me. We now host artists and writers who need solitude for breakthrough work. Full circle, Connor observed. Exclusion leading to inclusion on a broader scale. On our last night, Hassan presented me with a gift, a photo album the staff had kept. Pictures they'd taken during my first stay. Me learning to kiteboard, cooking with local staff, sitting alone at sunset. Images of a woman becoming herself. We knew you were special, Hassan said. Not because of what you spent, but how you transformed. You arrived running from something. You left running toward everything. Back in Hong Kong, the documentary Rough Cut exceeded expectations. Connor had woven together footage from the island, with family interviews, creating a narrative about how one person's journey toward authenticity can catalyze change in entire systems. Madison flew in for the preview. We watched ourselves on screen, the petty jealousies, the assumptions, the breakthrough moments. The film ended with a recent family gathering where we'd laughed freely, no roles or expectations, just genuine connection. We were so small, Madison whispered. Our vision, our understanding of success, our definition of family. We were doing our best with what we knew, I replied. Growth isn't about rejecting who we were. It's about expanding beyond it. The Foundation's annual retreat happened in Kyoto that year. 25 scholarship recipients from around the world gathered for workshops, mentorship, and cultural exchange. Watching them network, share stories, and dream together, I saw my journey multiplied. During the closing ceremony, a young man from Bangladesh approached. Ms. Mitchell, I struggled with your story at first. Your family's wealth, the luxury travel. It seemed like problems I'd love to have. I nodded. I understand. What changed your perspective? Realizing exclusion is universal. Whether from poverty or privilege, we all know what it feels like to be unseen. Your response wasn't about money. It was about claiming agency in your own story. His words echoed later when I addressed the group. You're here because someone, somewhere, overlooked your potential. Maybe it was circumstance, maybe prejudice, maybe simple oversight. But you're also here because you refused to be defined by that exclusion. You created your own invitations. That night, the foundation board met. My family attended virtually. Parents from Sedona, Madison from Vermont, Connor from LA. We reviewed applications for the next cohort, debated program expansions, and discussed impact metrics. The conversation flowed easily, each voice valued, no hierarchy beyond expertise. Motion to expand the creative arts track, Madison proposed. Seconded, Connor added, with emphasis on storytelling for social change. I smiled. All in favor? Unanimous consent. The family that once made decisions through exclusion now operated through inclusive consensus. Later, alone in my hotel room overlooking Kyoto's temples, I reflected on the journey. That first Maldives trip had cost a fortune, but its value wasn't in the luxury, it was in the permission it gave me to expect more from life and relationships. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Mitchell, this is Aisha from the Maldives. Hassan gave me your information. I now run a cooking school for tourists and locals. Your kindness during our lesson inspired me to dream bigger. Thank you for seeing me as a teacher, not just resort staff. I stared at the message, moved by the ripple effects of respect. Every interaction mattered. Every person deserved recognition. The next quarter brought unexpected challenges. global markets destabilized, requiring careful navigation. My role demanded 18-hour days across multiple time zones. The old Natalie would have shouldered this alone, proving her worth through exhaustion. The current version assembled a talented team, delegated effectively, and maintained boundaries. During a particularly intense period, my family surprised me. They coordinated schedules to meet in Dubai, a central location for my current travels. No agenda, no occasion, just presence. "You looked stressed on our last call," Dad explained. "We wanted to remind you that you're not alone." We spent 3 days together. No phones during meals, no work discussions, just connection. Madison taught us meditation techniques she'd learned in Vermont. Connor screened his latest film about resilience in refugee communities. Our parents shared stories from their youth we'd never heard. I used to think success meant never needing anyone, I admitted during our final dinner. Now I know it means choosing the right people to need. And being chosen in return, Mom added, raising her glass. To the chosen family. The toast resonated. We'd evolved from biological family to chosen family, each relationship intentional, each gathering meaningful. Returning to Hong Kong, I found an invitation on my desk. World Economic Forum, panel discussion on inclusive leadership. They wanted me to share insights on transformation and authentic success. Preparing for Davos, I reviewed my journey. From excluded sister to global executive, from overlooked accountant to foundation founder, from seeking validation to providing it for others. The thread connecting everything wasn't ambition, it was the decision to see myself as worthy of the life I wanted. At Davos, I shared the panel with titans of industry, Nobel laureates, and social innovators. The moderator asked about pivotal moments in our leadership journeys. "Being excluded from my family's vacation," I said simply. The room stirred with surprise. I continued. "That rejection forced me to question everything: my worth, my relationships, my definition of success. It led to a single trip that changed my entire trajectory. But the real transformation wasn't luxury or even solitude. It was the realization that I could author my own story." Questions flooded in. How did exclusion become empowerment? How did personal transformation scale to systemic change? How did authentic leadership emerge from rejection? Exclusion is often a gift disguised as rejection, I explained. It forces you to find your own path. Once you do, you can light the way for others. After the panel, a young entrepreneur approached. "Your story gives me hope. I've felt excluded from traditional business networks." "Create your own network," I advised. "Include those who've been overlooked. Build the table you wish existed." The forum connected me with like-minded leaders. We formed an alliance focused on inclusive innovation, leveraging diversity for breakthrough solutions. Another ripple from that single Maldives decision. Flying back to Asia, I stopped in London to pack up my flat. My new role required a Hong Kong base, but I'd keep a small place in Chelsea. The Thames View had witnessed too much growth to abandon completely. Sorting through belongings, I found the original Maldives itinerary. The pristine paper showed creases from repeated folding, a coffee stain from planning sessions. Such a simple document, but it had changed everything. My phone rang. Connor, excited. The documentary won Sundance. They want a series exploring transformation stories globally. That's incredible. What's your vision? Following individuals who turned exclusion into evolution. Different contexts, economic, social, cultural, but similar journeys toward authenticity. Would you executive produce? Another opportunity to amplify the message. Absolutely. The series would tell stories like mine, but from infinitely diverse perspectives. A Dalit woman becoming a tech CEO. A refugee building a social enterprise. A disabled athlete redefining possibility. Each narrative would illustrate that exclusion, while painful, could catalyze extraordinary growth. As I sealed boxes for shipping, Sarah Chen called. "Ms. Mitchell, I wanted you to know. I'm establishing a scholarship for refugees pursuing finance degrees. Your foundation inspired me to pay it forward." "That's wonderful, Sarah. Need any guidance?" "Actually, would you consider being an advisor? I want to do this right. The multiplier effect in action. Each person helped would help others, creating an exponential impact." The foundation had become a movement. My final night in London, I stood on Millennium Bridge, watching the Thames flow toward the sea. The river's journey, from small stream to mighty waterway, paralleled my own evolution. What started as hurt, feelings over a family vacation, had become a global mission for inclusion. Tomorrow, I'd fly to Hong Kong to begin the next chapter. The World Bank had approached me about leading their inclusive development initiative. The role would influence policy affecting millions. The overlooked accountant would now ensure others weren't overlooked. But tonight, I simply stood on the bridge, grateful. Grateful for the exclusion that had freed me. Grateful for the family who'd learned to choose each other authentically. Grateful for every person who'd contributed to this journey. My phone buzzed with a family group message, a photo from Madison's Vermont cabin. Everyone gathered around a fireplace, raising mugs of hot chocolate. The caption, "Missing one." But, knowing she's exactly where she needs to be, I smiled, typing back, "Present in spirit. Chosen family transcends geography." The responses came quickly. Heart emojis from Mom. "Love you, sis," from Connor. "Proud of you," from Dad. "Save dates for next quarter, planning something special," from Madison. Walking back to my flat, I thought about legacy. The money spent on that first Maldives trip had been significant, but its true value was immeasurable. It had purchased not just luxury, but liberation. Not just experience, but evolution. Not just personal growth, but systemic change. The excluded woman had become the ultimate includer. The overlooked sister had become impossible to ignore. The journey that began with feeling unseen had resulted in seeing everyone. And this was just the beginning. Each life touched would touch others. Each barrier broken would make the next easier to breach. Each person who claimed their worth would inspire others to do the same. The ripples from that single decision, to stop waiting for invitation and create my own experience, would continue expanding across the global pond of human potential. I entered my flat for the last time. I whispered a thank you to the woman who'd booked that first trip. She couldn't have imagined where it would lead, but she'd been brave enough to begin. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, to expand the circle of inclusion. But tonight, I celebrated the journey, from exclusion to inclusion, from rejection to connection, from one woman's transformation to a movement that would touch countless lives. The story that began with being left out had become a legacy of bringing others in. And that, more than any luxury vacation or professional achievement, was the true measure of a life well lived. 10 years. A decade since that night in Denver when I'd seen Madison's Instagram post from the private jet to Bora Bora. Standing in the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, preparing to address the Global Commission on Economic Inclusion, I marveled at life's unpredictable trajectories. 5 minutes, Dr. Mitchell, my aide, Tomas, informed me. The doctorate was honorary from Oxford, recognizing my work in inclusive financial systems. The girl who'd been excluded from family vacations now shaped global policy affecting billions. My phone vibrated. A message from our family group. "We're all watching the live stream. Break a leg." The accompanying photo showed them gathered at our foundation's new headquarters in Singapore, where we'd centralized operations after expanding to 57 countries. I stepped onto the stage, facing delegates from 193 nations. "Transformation begins with a simple question," I opened. "Who are we leaving behind, and why?" 10 years ago, I was left behind. That exclusion became my greatest gift. The presentation flowed naturally. Data on economic barriers, case studies, from our foundation, policy recommendations that had emerged from lived experience. But woven throughout were human stories. The scholarship recipient from rural India now leading a fintech revolution, the refugee who'd created a job training empire, the disabled entrepreneur whose innovations had redefined accessibility standards. Exclusion is a universal experience, I continued, but inclusion must be an intentional choice. When we create systems that see everyone, we unlock potential that benefits all. After the session, Switzerland's finance minister approached. Your proposal for the micro-investment framework, it's revolutionary. Would you consider leading the implementation task force? Another door opening. I'd learned to walk through them with grace, knowing each opportunity carried responsibility to open more doors for others. That evening, I flew to Singapore for our foundation's 10th anniversary gala. The original scholarship recipients had become donors, mentors, and board members. The cycle of giving had become self-sustaining. Madison met me at the airport, her latest book tucked under her arm. Advance copy, she grinned. Dedicated to you, of course. Redefining Family. From Obligation to Choice, read the cover. Her journey from status-obsessed real estate agent to mindfulness author and family dynamics expert had been as dramatic as my own. At the gala, Connor premiered his latest documentary. 10 years later, The Ripple Effect. He'd followed 5 foundation beneficiaries over a decade, documenting how their success had impacted their communities. The aggregate effect was staggering. Thousands of jobs created, millions of lives improved. My parents, now in their 70s, served as the foundation's senior advisors. Dad's financial acumen and Mom's networking skills had proved invaluable. They'd found purpose in retirement beyond their wildest imagination. To think this all started because we made a terrible mistake, Mom said during her speech. We excluded our daughter from our narrow definition of family. She responded by creating a global family of changemakers. The surprise guest was Hassan from the Maldives resort. He'd used his savings to start a hospitality training school for underprivileged youth. Ms. Mitchell showed me that service could be leadership, he told the audience. That dignity exists in every interaction. As the evening wound down, Connor pulled me aside. I have something to show you. He led me to a private room where a video screen displayed a familiar scene, the Maldives resort. We bought it, Madison announced, joining us. The whole family. We're converting it into a retreat center for burnout recovery and leadership development. Luxury meets purpose. I stared at them, speechless. The place where I'd discovered my worth would now help others find theirs. It's not just about the location, Connor explained. It's about symbolism, turning a site of exclusion into a space for inclusion. We're calling it the Transformation Institute. The first program is for overlooked professionals, Madison added. People like you were talented but unseen. We'll combine luxury restoration with leadership development. Show them they deserve both success and self-care. My eyes welled. You bought the island? We bought the opportunity, Dad corrected, entering with Mom. To multiply what you started. To ensure no one else spends years feeling less than. The next morning, I woke up in my Singapore apartment to a New York Times notification. Mitchell. Foundation announces billion-dollar endowment, largest in inclusive development history. The donors list read like a who's who of global business. Leaders who'd witnessed our impact and wanted to scale it exponentially. My assistant entered with coffee and a knowing smile. The President of Kenya is requesting a meeting, the Prime Minister of New Zealand wants to discuss your mentorship model. And someone named Aisha from the Maldives sent a video message. I played Aisha's message first. Her cooking school had evolved into a culinary institute partnering with international hotels. You treated me as a teacher, not just staff, she said. Now I train hundreds of young people in both cooking and dignity. Thank you for seeing me. The day unfolded in a symphony of connections. Video calls, bridging continents, decisions affecting millions, partnerships forming across sectors. But I kept returning to Aisha's message. Individual dignity, personal recognition, the foundation, stones of systemic change. That afternoon, I keynoted a conference on leadership in the age of inclusion. The audience included Fortune 500 CEOs, nonprofit directors, and government officials. But I focused on the young faces in the back, the assistants, the interns, the ones taking notes. Look around this room, I suggested. Who's missing? Whose voice aren't we hearing? Whose perspective might transform our thinking? Leadership isn't about occupying the stage. It's about ensuring the stage is accessible to all. During the Q&A, a young woman stood. I'm an executive assistant. People often look through me, not at me. How do I find my voice in spaces where I'm invisible? The question transported me back a decade. You start by seeing yourself, I answered. By recognizing your own worth independent of others' perception. Then you create value so undeniable that invisibility becomes impossible. But remember, the goal isn't just personal visibility, it's creating systems where no one is invisible. After the conference, that assistant approached me. Her name was Priya. She'd been taking notes during negotiations, observing dynamics, learning. Within minutes, she'd shared 3 insights that had escaped the senior executives. Have you considered our leadership development program? I asked. Her eyes widened. But I'm just an assistant. I was just an accountant. Labels are starting. Points, not destinations. Flying to New York that evening for a World Bank board meeting, I reflected on patterns. How many Priyas existed in organizations worldwide? How many overlooked individuals possessed transformative potential? Our foundation had reached thousands, but millions more waited. In my hotel room, I opened my laptop to prepare for tomorrow's presentation. An email from Madison caught my eye. Family video call in 1 hour. Important announcement. I joined the call to find my family gathered at Connor's house in Malibu. Their faces barely contained excitement. We've been discussing the next decade, Connor began. The foundation's established, the institute's launching, but we think a bigger impact requires a new approach. Madison continued. We want to create a global network of transformation centers, not just the Maldives, strategic locations worldwide where exclusion meets evolution. We've identified properties in Kenya, Peru, Greece, and New Zealand, Dad added. Each would serve different populations, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, social innovators, all united by the theme of transforming exclusion into excellence. Mom smiled. We're calling it the Mitchell Global Network for Inclusive Excellence, and we want you to be the founding chairperson. I sat in my Manhattan hotel room, overlooking Central Park, as my family laid out a vision that dwarfed anything we'd previously imagined. They'd spent months researching, planning, securing partnerships. This wasn't just their support for my mission, they'd made it their own. What do you think? Madison asked anxiously. I think, I said slowly, that the family who once excluded me has become the most inclusive force I know. The celebration was brief. We quickly dove into logistics, timelines, partnerships. The call lasted 3 hours, spanning strategy, values, and implementation. When we finally disconnected, I stood at my window, watching joggers circle the reservoir below. 10 years ago, I'd been circling my own limitations, trapped in others' perceptions. That single decision to book a trip to the Maldives had shattered those constraints. Now the ripples had become waves, reaching shores I'd never imagined. The next morning's World Bank meeting focused on innovative financing for inclusion initiatives. I presented our foundation's model, how initial investments created self-sustaining cycles of advancement. The board voted unanimously to adopt our framework for their global programs. During lunch break, I called the original Maldives resort. Ahmed, now the general manager, answered with delight. Dr. Mitchell, Hassan told me about your family's purchase. We're honored to become part of your mission. Ahmed, you were part of it from the beginning. Every staff member who treated me with dignity, who saw me as worthy of that luxury, you all taught me about inclusive excellence. That evening, I attended a Broadway show with fellow board members. The play explored themes of identity and belonging, art, reflecting life's universal struggles. During intermission, I excused myself for air. Standing on 42nd Street, surrounded by tourists and locals, I felt a profound connection to humanity's shared journey. We all sought belonging. We all feared exclusion. We all possessed potential waiting for recognition. My phone buzzed with a notification from our foundation's app. A scholarship recipient in Bangladesh had just been accepted to medical school. Another in Colombia had launched a social enterprise. A beneficiary in South Africa had been elected to parliament. Each notification represented a life transformed, a community improved, a system challenged. The aggregate impact felt overwhelming, in the best possible way. The show's second act resonated even more deeply. As characters found their voices and claimed their spaces, I thought about the circular nature of transformation. The excluded become includers, the overlooked become seers. The cycle perpetuates, expanding with each revolution. Walking back to my hotel, I encountered a homeless man near Columbus Circle. Instead of passing by, I stopped. We talked for 20 minutes about his background in construction, his ideas for affordable housing, his dreams deferred but not destroyed. Before parting, I handed him my card. There's a program in our network for experienced professionals facing transitional challenges. If you're interested, call this number. Ask for James. Tell him Natalie suggested you reach out. His eyes filled with tears. You see me? We all deserve to be seen. Back in my room, I began drafting the speech for the Transformation Institute's opening. The circle was completing, returning to where it all began, but at an entirely different altitude. The woman who'd fled to the Maldives seeking solitude would return leading a movement of inclusion. A text from Connor included a photo from our family's recent gathering. We looked different now, not just older but deeper. The superficial bonds of shared DNA had evolved into chosen connections of shared purpose. As I prepared for bed, I noticed the box of sand from my first Maldives trip, still on my nightstand wherever I traveled. Hassan's gift had become my talisman, i.e., reminder that transformation often begins with grounding yourself in new soil. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more decisions, more opportunities to expand the circle of inclusion. But tonight, I simply sat with gratitude for the journey. That family vacation to Bora Bora I'd been excluded from? It had been the perfect disappointment. Their rejection had redirected my entire life trajectory. By leaving me out, they'd pushed me toward a purpose that now included millions. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most painful packages. Sometimes exclusion is just inclusion in disguise, waiting for us to unwrap its potential. Sometimes being left behind is exactly what we need to leap ahead. As sleep approached, I whispered a prayer of thanks to the universe, to circumstances, to the family who'd unknowingly set me on this path. Their oversight had become my insight. Their limitation had become my liberation. Their narrow vision had led to my expanded view. The girl who'd once cried over Instagram photos of family vacations now shaped global initiatives for inclusion. The woman who'd felt unworthy of luxury now ensured others experienced dignity. The story that began with exclusion had become a legacy of belonging, and as I drifted off, one thought echoed: this is just the beginning. Every person we've touched will touch others. Every barrier we've broken makes the next easier to breach. Every life transformed multiplies into community change. The ripples from that single decision to stop waiting for invitation and create. My own experience would continue expanding across oceans of human potential, reaching shores not yet imagined, touching lives not yet born. The excluded had become the ultimate includer. The journey from rejection to connection was complete, but the mission, ensuring no one else felt unseen, unvalued, uninvited, would continue as long as exclusion existed anywhere in the world. And that was a vacation worth taking, every single day for the rest of my life. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.